Is baseball still America's pastime? This is Flashing the Leather, and we're going to find that out with our boy, John Jones. This is the first ever Flashing the Leather. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the first ever Flashing the Leather. And if you have been watching the Iceman and Coach Sports Show, you know that Coach and I started to do a little bit of a branch off with some niche topics that we are calling INC Sports. And baseball was a topic that I wanted to talk about because I used to love baseball. And I'm not equipped to talk about baseball all by myself. I need some help. So I have brought in an aficionado of what has been known as America's pastime, Mr. John Jones. Johns, welcome to the studio, my man.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here.
Isn't it fun to do this? This
Yes.
is something that not a lot of people get to do after work, late at night when the kids are in
You're
bed.
right. And it is exciting. I'm very glad to be here, and I'm happy to talk about the sport.
I am very happy to talk about it as well with you. So I think what we have to do is we have to establish what I like to call our bona fides in baseball, because I don't think that we can do baseball content without really saying like why we are equipped to be able to do this. So what I want to do with you is talk about, or have you tell the audience how you started to love baseball, what got you into it, childhood memories, things like that, because I think that is one thing that baseball is uniquely equipped to talk about, is so many people, their memories are steeped in nostalgia.
Well, I guess the team that I remember earliest, and I mean, maybe everyone needs to start there, where like, when did I start really getting into baseball? And I'm a Phillies fan, and I know you're a Red Sox fan, and it's when the team, as a kid, your team gets good. And when I saw that was 1993. And I got baseball cards. It came with the bubble gum, and you open it and you see it. And it's, you kind of do that stuff. But 100%. When your team gets good, it's on another level. So I was an Army brat, and we were actually overseas in Germany, and the games would come on at 2:30 in the morning or something. So I'd wake up in the morning and find out if they won. They did not win the World Series, but after kind of living through that playoffs, I was hooked. And every year I'm like, are they good? Are they good? And so since then, I've kind of always, and I still know the players on that team, and I still kind of cherish. And John Kruk was on that team, and now he's an announcer, and I love that. So that's my earliest like nostalgic moment of that sport.
And for me, I grew up, because I think it's a familial thing for me. Like, I grew up in the New England area, so New England sports traditionally have been losers. It has only been the last, 20 years or so in which they have been considered winning and hated. But for a very, very long time, there was not a lot of success. There wasn't a lot of joy that came from being a Red Sox fan. But because my dad was a Red Sox fan, I, by extension, also became a Red Sox fan. And we went to Fenway Park every single summer. So I got to go to what is now considered a cathedral in baseball. But I was young. But I didn't know what real winning was. And so it was a pure love of the game, because I just loved to watch it and loved to see it. And so rarely did I get the opportunity to see the team do well. Division titles was about as good as it got for us. And then in 2004, everything changed, obviously. But
that was a magical year, for no doubt,
for a lot of things. Yeah. I mean, it was after the Bartman year, which is also magical for so many different reasons. But my point being is that baseball is uniquely tied to a lot of people's childhoods. Like, I've never personally met anybody who said, oh, I got into baseball when I was in my 20s, or I got into baseball in my 30s. I feel like a lot of people were almost grandfathered into loving baseball, because it's really an easy sport to get kids into.
That's a great point.
Your kids are into it.
Yeah, they're into it mainly because I'm into it, and that's kind of feeding into, like, you kind of indoctrinated into it, like you just mentioned. That's, I hadn't even thought about that, but that's true. I've taken my kids to Washington Nationals games. We watch it. We get MLB TV. We watch highlights. That's the best way to consume the sport, in my opinion, by the way, doing those condensed games and recaps. But yeah, you're right. They love baseball because I do. No doubt.
We're also willing to be a sponsor for MLB TV. Oh. If MLB TV is in the market for a sponsor, that was a great little plug. Use the word indoctrinated. So much of a better word than what I used. You're a wordsmith and that's just, I just for some reason, now
Mm-hmm.
in my 40s, and I think you're in that same place too. I think we're about in the same age.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
baseball to me has become more enjoyable through other people. The game has evolved in a lot of
Mhm.
ways, and not all for the bad. But when we were watching
Oh, it's
baseball,
always evolved.
yes, it
It
has.
always has. Yeah. It's more this year, but
Yes,
yeah.
but it's a more subtle evolution for
Mm-hmm.
baseball because baseball is so married to their past. And sometimes to the detriment of the quality of the product, to the point where we don't want to give up things of our past in order to have something in our future. And that's where all of this debate about the pitch clock has come in. Now, I will say this.
Mm-hmm.
Coach and I have talked about the pitch clock on the main show, and boy, we really rumbled the bee's nest by talking about it because it is such a polarizing issue. I don't know if it is now, and that's what we're going to get into. We're going to talk about the evolution of it. But at the time, this is right before spring training happened or during spring training, man, people had an opinion
I
about the
remember you
spring.
texted me that.
But you did
Yeah.
too. You had a negative opinion about the pitch clock and have come around since then, right? Because you were somebody who were like, I'm not sure how I feel about this.
Prior to the season, yes, I did. I especially in the spring training games, there was actually a few games, one in particular that ended in a pitch clock violation strikeout call, and it was all over social media, and people see that and you're like, oh my god. And I follow a lot of baseball social media, and a lot of people see that and go, ooh, cringe. Um, I think since then it's worked out. I've been to two baseball games this season, and I stayed all 9 innings. That was with kids as well, so that was shocking and surprising. And I think that all of it's kind of worked itself out with umpires recognizing that they need to be able to have the baseball moments, and players, mainly the batter, getting in the box and getting ready. And more action, more baseball. I think that's what MLB was going for, was let's have more action, more product. There's enough waiting around. And I think they're right. And once the season started, I began to recognize it. Now, about 40 games into the season, I love it. I think when I watch a baseball game, you're getting way more action, way more pitches, faster paced, and there's nothing I hate about it. And I haven't watched a game that I said, "Ooh, I think they missed that call."
I never was negative on it because I always knew that there are going to be kinks at the beginning. And that's why you put this thing out in spring training. You don't debut this in
Right.
October in the playoffs because you want to make sure these kinks get out in
Right.
games that I don't want to say that don't matter, but certainly games that have less of a significance. And as the season starts, you've already worked some things out in spring training. So we've seen some of these pitch clock violations and things like that that probably aren't going to happen. And there were some growing pains in April. You saw, was it Cody Bellinger who got a pitch clock violation for, was it a curtain
Mm-hmm.
call?
Yep.
Things like that.
Yep. He did.
And those
That's
things
right.
were addressed by the league
I
office,
think the
right?
umpire did the wrong thing there.
Of
Yeah.
course he did. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
now there's a discussion to be had about look at me Louie umpires and other umpires that want to be the star of the show. And that's always going to happen. It doesn't matter whether there's a pitch clock or not. You're going to have those umpires who want to be seen when the whole point of an umpire is to not be seen. But
100%. Yeah.
so now that we're sitting here in May, we look at the data, and obviously runs scored seem to be up. I believe balls put in play are also up. Now, every single season for the last like 15 years, we've seen balls in play just continue to dip and dip and dip, which
Mm-hmm.
takes action away from the play on the field, which then makes the game less palpable. Somehow there's less action and the games are longer. That correlation, I never understood that part.
I don't miss it. I don't miss batters stepping out of the box, readjusting their batting gloves or their knee or their elbow brace. I think Bryce Harper even came back, and he just came back from Tommy John surgery, and he said, "Oh, I need to readjust my elbow guard," and stepped out of the box to Nope, I think he got a pitch clock violation, no, you got to get it on quicker, Bryce. And he was notorious last year for having just readjusting every glove, touching the ground. He did everything, and I liked it. But yeah, you get every player doing that, it's not fun. So yeah, same with the pitchers. You're also seeing some strategy, kind of sitting there and waiting for the pitch clock to go all the way down,
Uh-huh.
and then releasing it. It kind of forces the batter to take one of those precious timeouts, and they only get two, I think, per at bat. So I actually like it. Then you're watching it and kind of seeing the players be strategic about it, and for me, that makes it even more exciting. It's that inside baseball game.
Well, and that's what makes baseball exciting in general is It's the gamesmanship. And that has always existed, and it's always evolved too with the game. And there's always those unwritten rules that you and I always sort of, I don't want to say we roll our eyes to, but there are some things about the game
Mhm.
that are eye roll inducing. But the action of it has been exciting. And I like it because I think there are a lot of players in the league that are going to be showcased. And I think the game is going to benefit from that because there are obviously your Otanis, your Aaron Judges, your Mike Trouts. But there's guys like Jazz Chisholm, right, who their game is probably better suited for a game with more action. And even though they do hit home runs, there are a lot of guys like that. And I think that the marketing of baseball is going to improve because of this. And the players aren't complaining about it. That's who it really
That's
matters.
true. Yeah, I haven't heard any players really complain about
No,
it.
players adapt to the game.
Absolutely, you
They
have
have
to.
they have adapted like crazy. The Astros surely adapted, hitting trash cans. I mean, they did a lot of those things, right?
Yeah.
But the gamesmanship, trying to win in the
Oh
margins
yeah,
in
getting
baseball,
an edge. Yeah, I mean, there's
always.
there was even Judge recently was eyeing his dugout where he was, appearing to look like something, and then
I was going to say, can we have an aside about this? Because
yeah,
I have just seen very preliminary articles about it, and I know that the Blue Jays announcers were making a big deal out
announcers.
of it.
Sure.
I honestly
Yeah.
don't know. Can you explain to me and the listeners and viewers what that's all about?
It seems like it's a kind of a nothing burger. The Blue Jays, it's basically just a kind of a rivalry that's heating up. It's getting really spicy. Aaron Judge, there's a picture of it where he's looking not at the pitcher but at the dugout, and everybody's seeing that and saying, "What is he actually looking at?" And part of me is like, yeah, he's looking over for a sign from some coach. He's maybe sending a sign. I remember back in the like 90s and 2000, you'd have guys at second base, on and second base, giving signs to the batter when they looked at the catcher. So there's always a little bit of sign stealing, trying to get an upper hand. The Astros went too far. They did it every at bat. There's
Yes.
records of it. Once in a while, you try to get away with something. He was caught. He was caught. But the beautiful part of this story is the next game he goes and he's down 0-2. I think he had a strikeout, and then he crushes one to deep center field. I mean, you can't ask for. And Judge is a class act player. I love Aaron Judge. Okay, I'm not a big Yankees fan, but damn, I just love that.
Well, you can love a guy on a team without necessarily having it be on a team that you like. I mean,
Yeah.
you can respect guys that don't
Oh,
play
you
for the
can't.
teams you
I,
like.
I can't say that I hate any team. Like embittered hate, like a Dallas Cowboys Redskins rivalry or something like that. I don't know what's different with baseball for me. Now for you, I know you hate the Yankees because you're a Red Sox fan, maybe, but
You know, as
it's
I've gotten older, my stance on sports has softened quite a bit. I think I said this to you the other day out in the yard, and I've become more of a generalist in sports. Part of it's because we do stuff
hmm
like this, right,
hmm
where I have to make content, and I think the evolution of the Red Zone channel in the NFL as well has done that for me because now I watch every team and every game, and I
right.
see all the good stuff. And so that has actually hurt, to bring it back to baseball, hurt my viewership of baseball because of how little action there is and how long the games are. But the games are getting shorter. Now, before we get into
hmm
the teams that are happening or that are playing now and the results that we've seen, the pitch clock in October, by the time we
hmm
get to October, are they going to make any amendments to some of these rules? Because a lot of people who don't like the pitch clock, they aren't haters of the pitch clock, but they understand that the tension that is built in October is what makes those games special. And is the pitch clock going to take away from that, or are we going to see Major League Baseball over time make some adjustments the way that, say, hockey does in their
I
overtime?
have. I guess I don't know. I haven't seen any rules or amendments, and it's the same thing with a runner on second base in the extra innings. I don't know. I have to see if I can't not remember if they did that in the postseason last year because that was a rule from last year as well. So those types of rules, in regular season, like saying to have the pitch clock, to have the runner on second base in extra innings to make the game more exciting and more fast paced. I like it. Postseason, I want to see the real deal. I
Okay.
want to see the. I want to see. Now, I don't want to take 5 minutes to 10 minutes per batter for timeouts, what have yous. I want to see action, but yeah, I definitely, if a guy needs a few extra seconds, I don't want a strike call. I don't want to end a postseason game in a strike call. That
Oh,
would
wouldn't
just
that
be,
be great?
oh no.
Oh, wouldn't that be great? Well, there's got to be some.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Well,
Hold on. Wait a minute. Wait. We're supposed to have fun here. There's got to be some players that you would love to see that happen to.
oh, a
Can I get
strikeout
can I
on
get
a
your can I get your top five? Top 5 players that John would love to see strike out to lose a World
Lately,
Series.
I've been hating on the Cardinals.
Excellent.
They stink this year, and I absolutely love it. Wouldn't it be great to see like Arenado strike out on a strike three? I don't think they're even going to make the postseason. But
This is called the dream, John. Like, we need this. This is if you were to create the best scenario ever of a player
about
that
like
you just loathe.
like a Ronald Acuna.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
right.
that would be nice. Or like let's see, Pete Alonso. I think might be fun. But
He still
no,
plays?
I mean, I wouldn't want to see that honestly. I want to see the maximum. I want to see the best competitiveness.
All right. That's a more tepid take. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
Well, we got to warm up into this. I can't just have you throwing out hot takes, I guess, but we will get there with this show, folks. We're going to loosen this guy up here. So let's get to the actual play on the field. So we're in the middle of May, and do you feel confident that we have a sample size to know which teams are good and which teams are bad unequivocally, or do you think for most teams, and we're talking 95% of the league, we just don't know yet?
I love that question. Yeah, when you sent me that question, I'm like, oh my gosh, what a great question. Because I think 40 games is a great sample size for what you say. It's 1 quarter through the season. So if you equivalent this to NFL, you're 1 quarter through the season. You kind of see, okay, there's some new teams coming up. Baseball, sometimes I wish was a shorter season because then you could see you've got teams that are emerging now. They're fun. The Pirates, the Rays, forget some of the other ones that are extremely hot, but low market.
Marlins are 500.
Marlins, yeah, sure. So you've got these teams that can kind of explode early or have a rally and push. But the 162 games, that is a long season. You've got to have the horses to go, and that's why you've got the Yankees always being there, the Dodgers, teams that spend the money. The Astros will be there for a long time. The Braves, and then execute. So I hope that the Pirates and the Rays can keep up. It's yet to be seen. The Rays are kind of a special case because they've been doing it for a very long time, where they're able to do more with less. So I give them a little bit more credit, and I don't know what the special sauce is down there, but
That's what I was going to ask you is like, how do they do that? Because historically in that sport, the small market teams just cannot compete, and they're throwing out bottom 5 payroll, and they're getting better every year. Now, they haven't won a World Series. We should say that. I mean, that's the goal, is to win a World Series at some point.
True.
And they've had some early exits. I think a couple years ago they lost to the Red Sox in the first round. They were a 100-win team.
True.
But they came out of the gates so blazing hot that since then they've seemed almost tepid, right? Because they've been 5-5, and it's like, oh, they're on a losing streak. They're slumping, and they're like 20-something games over 500. Their run differential is like 156. And what's funny about that is the AL East, if you look at it, every team but the last place team, I can't think of who it is right now, is over 500. Like almost every team in that division is over 500, and yet they're all like 9 games back.
If you're trying to get into baseball, follow the Tampa Bay Rays. Read the articles about what they're doing in their clubhouse. I was listening to an announcer the other day talk about the Rays, and they said, "Well, what is it about the Rays that makes them so good? And are they really complicated? Or are they getting into the details?" And the announcer said, the player said, "No, they're just simplifying the game." Didn't get any more details than that, but their pitching is notoriously good, and then their hitting is on fire this year. Randy Arozarena is one of the most exciting players in the game, and he was blowing the world up in the World Baseball Classic for Mexico. It was crazy. So yeah, and Yandy Diaz is hitting the ball well, not necessarily playing great defense, but the OPS is I think still over 1,000. I mean, they're just crushing the ball.
Yeah, they are. And they're doing it in a fun way, too. Like, they're having fun while they're playing, but they're not the only small market team that's overachieving right now. But I want to go back to what you said about the sample size.
Yeah.
And you talked about the shortened season. Now, the COVID shortened season was the best glimpse of that, because if you look at the teams, number one, they extended the playoff field so that more teams could make the playoffs because there was such a difference in the way that season went down. But because it was a shortened season, there were teams that made a playoff push or made the playoffs. The Marlins are the perfect example of that. They've been a laughingstock for how many years, even though they have a couple of world championships, and they made the playoffs. I know a lot of people said they wouldn't if it was a 162-game season, but my counter argument to that is, well, why do we need that many games? And if we can have some parity in the sport where these small market teams can have a little bit of a better chance to compete, isn't that better for the game?
Yeah, I guess I agree. So remember back, and I forget what year it was, they expanded it from 150 to 162. It used to be 150, and that was the whole story between the Babe Ruth single season home run record and Roger Maris.
Yep.
However, for the owner standpoint, they're making more money, more games, more money, more content. From the viewer, yeah, that's what makes the NFL very special. Is every game carries so much weight. Baseball, you're not going to win them all. You know that. You're going into it knowing that. And yeah, personally, you're asking my opinion. I wouldn't mind going down to 150.
That's all. That's what I want to hear. Man.
I would love to see that. However, MLB did expand the playoffs that you touched on, and now, I mean, that's how the Phillies got into the playoffs last year. That's how you're going to see other teams that are able to, like, going down to the trade deadline. You're gonna see teams, well, we're on the fringe, and then they're gonna make and spend that money and get that player. Yeah, that's exciting.
But isn't that what you want?
Oh yeah,
the trade deadline should be exciting. I remember it used to be exciting when the Expos traded for Cliff Floyd because they were in first place. It was a big deal. Now, they didn't make it.
Wow.
But that's okay. That happens, right? Like, those things are going to happen. But that's a dusty reference now because that was like 20-something years ago. But that was a big trade for them because they historically had not been in on those trades. I mean, they traded away Pedro Martinez, remember? So, and they had Randy Johnson. I mean,
apparently the Expos were just stacked.
And they had Tom Brady, too, by the way.
Roy Halladay?
They drafted Tom Brady. I mean, come on.
Oh, they drafted Tom Brady. That's right. Yes, that's right. Yes.
So let's just put that into perspective for the listeners. They had two of the greatest pitchers I ever saw play and the greatest quarterback I've ever seen play, all on their roster. And they're no longer a franchise anymore. So I don't know what that says about them. But there have been other small market
mention Vlad Guerrero.
Oh, I mean, of course, Vlad Guerrero. But I was just adding insult to injury at that point because they were just piling on. Didn't they have Gary Carter, too? Isn't he another guy who was an Expos catcher there, Hall of Famer?
I know. You're going back on that.
I am going back. I mean, that's what you got to do with the Expos. They haven't been around for like 15 years, 16 years. But you mentioned the Pirates. The Pirates, I feel like, are that franchise in MLB that has had such little success.
So much fun to watch the Pirates this year.
And McCutchen is on the team again, which you'd think it was like 2006 if you were not paying attention. But unfortunately, they're coming a little bit back down to earth, and that we knew that was going to happen. But it's fun, and it's fun for that fan base who hasn't seen any semblance of success since 1991.
Well, I mean, their owner is frankly a piece of garbage. He doesn't spend money. I think he's gone on record with how he's not going to spend any money on this team. It's just sad. If I was a Pirates fan, I would have been done a long time ago. But something is happening that's magical in Pittsburgh this year, and it's been a lot of fun. You've got a young team. They signed Brian Reynolds. That was a noticeable. They've got their pitching is working. I can't remember a time when their pitching has ever worked. Mitch Keller has thrown 2 shutout games in a row. Bednar is on the team. He was on the American World Baseball Classic team, and he's been pretty dominant. I want to see him continue. They've lost, I think, their last 10 games. Whatever, they're like 1-9 or something.
Yeah, it's not good.
They're on a skid right now.
Happens.
They might be in first place still. I haven't looked at the standings.
Brewers are in first place as of today, which is boring. Okay, that's just my opinion. I find the NL Central to be pretty boring because
there it is.
Well, I'm just saying, there's just a lot of teams out there that have historically not been. I mean, there's the Cardinals, of course, right?
Yeah.
The Cubs ebb and flow. They're obviously in a weird place.
The Cubbies have been overachieving. I mean, this is their ideal situation to be middle of the pack right now.
Yeah.
And it's great. I like the Cubs. I'm happy for them. You're right though. The Reds below average. The Pirates are the surprise team, and they'll probably come back to ground. But
it's more about franchises that don't have a feel to me, and it's not just baseball. I said this about hockey. The Carolina Hurricanes just don't have a feel to me. They're a boring franchise. I just don't have any emotion toward them whatsoever. And I think the Milwaukee Brewers are like that for me. I think the Ryan Braun situation started that for me, and then Yelich has been there, but I feel like Yelich has I don't
as far as boring, you mean Ryan Braun being
Ryan Braun, not even boring, but like the everything about them, like they were a feel good team when he was there, and you had CC Sabathia, right? They were
Oh, yeah.
kind of making a push there, and
Mhm.
it's kind of exciting because it was a team you don't normally see. And then the Ryan Braun stuff happened, and they haven't really been a fun team to watch for me. They've never really done anything outside of having regular season success, and then they get to the playoffs, and you don't see.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to see them make a run, and I want to see them go back to the old pinstripes. Like, if I'm being perfectly honest, I want to see that old school glove
Oh,
logo
yeah.
in the World Series.
Oh, yeah.
And
I know what you're talking about.
you know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about?
That
Like,
lighter that more, like, bright blue
yes,
color. Yeah.
yes.
Mhm.
I mean, the Marlins brought back the teal, which
I
I'm
love the
very
uni.
happy
I
about.
love the old unis. I hope they keep getting a lot of flair with the uni. I like the Marlins uni. I like
Yeah,
the San Diego Padres, like old school. I
it's
like
it's like the brown one, right?
the brown. Yeah, but it's got like yellow. It's like a little rainbow thing going on, like the old Houston Astros jersey, and it
Oh
kind of
yeah,
works. But yeah, I would like to see that. But yeah, the Brewers are kind of a weird team. I see what you mean by them being boring. Christian Yelich was like their big signing from the Marlins. He's got like lower back issues for years and years.
yeah.
He's never really come
That's
and
why I
done
was
anything.
hesitant to say he's underachieved since bringing them on because he was really good with the Marlins. Like, he
So
was
good.
their cornerstone piece, and
Yeah.
he was unhappy there, very unhappy. And I
Who
don't
isn't?
blame the guy.
No, I don't blame him at all for that. That's what the Marlins do. They sell their players. They get new players. They keep bringing them in, and sometimes it works. But yeah, and then the Brewers last year and the year before, they had the best pitching staff almost in the NL
Yeah,
with Corbin Burns and Woodruff and Peralta. They had a good 1, 2, 3, and you're like, if they can go to the postseason, they've got those three. You need those kind of
hmm
three guys to go into the postseason with, and they had that. So they're going to be in the mix. But yeah, there's no bats that are jumping off the page at you on that team, and
no,
they need the pitching to kind of carry them. Which
it's because I'm a casual fan. Like, if I
yeah,
lived out there, probably I would feel a little bit differently. Or if
mm-hmm.
I was a fan of one of these teams. I mean, you just blatantly said you hate the Cardinals on this, and I just said I hate the whole division. So I mean,
And I lived in St. Louis.
I have never been to St. Louis. I actually do not have much of an aversion to many of the teams. When I say I find them boring, it doesn't mean that I dislike them. It's just
Yeah.
I'm apathetic about
I
how I
actually
feel
love
about them. You know
Nolan
what I'm saying?
Arenado. Yeah, there's a couple players on that team that I like. Goldschmidt,
Goldie.
killing it, and
Yep.
I love that because he was kind of dormant for a while, and he's having a late resurgence, which I love. But yeah, that team is just, and it it is. This is the worst I've seen the Cardinals, and the best that I've seen the Pirates, and it's really weird.
It is weird. You know what else is weird? Is all these small market teams are basically outplaying the big market teams. But the teams that spent a lot of money in the offseason, one of them is your direct rival in the New York Mets.
Mm-hmm.
And the Padres, they're kind of middling in mediocrity right now.
Yeah.
And maybe it's unfair to think that they would come out guns blazing after making these signings. But when you're the Padres, and what did they spend? $800 million? Some crazy number on these guys. And they still haven't even signed Soto, have they? So you're talking about they still have,
I think they control Soto for the remainder of the year.
but why are they underachieving? Is
Mm-hmm.
it the fact that it just takes a while for a team to gel, or have these teams overspent because they have owners who are new and want to make a splash, but they're not signing the right guys? Because baseball, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times, the teams that end up winning the World Series sometimes come out of nowhere. I think of the 13 Red Sox in that regard. Like, that was a team of a hodgepodge of a bunch of guys that
Yeah.
on paper you're like, really? And then they were the right fit at the right time, and they all happen to have like career years. But why is, I mean, Scherzer, a lot of people are saying he's done.
Oh yeah, and Scherzer's one of my all-time favorite players, and that hurts. But I knew it was inevitable. I mean, when they signed Scherzer, what are you going to get? Like 2 years out of him, maybe
Yeah.
3, and that's if you're lucky. So, and he's already. I mean, yeah, it looked like he needed the sticky stuff this year, and he got in trouble for it, and he came back and didn't look great again, and now I think he's still on the IL.
Yes.
It's not looking good for him. Hopefully, he can turn it around. I'm rooting for him. But yeah, you're right. Like, these big market teams are underachieving. They spent the money. They want to see more. You will see them in the mix. But you're right. Like, there is that X factor. This is why the game of baseball needs to be followed a little bit closer, because there is that chemistry and that magic that happens in the dugout. The odds are not in your favor. The statistics are not in your favor. You said this team on paper looks awful, and they're getting it done, and that's exciting. I feel bad for Mets and Padres fans. I know the Mets fans are a very passionate fan base, and I have to respect that. They've been wanting to win for a long time.
And
We'll see if
their owner wants to spend money too. Like,
they want, and that's a good sign.
it
I
is a
think,
good sign,
you
to the
know.
point that all the other owners hate the guy because he's
Mhm.
setting the bar so damn
Oh yeah,
high that they're like, I don't want to do this. I mean, some of these owners, let's be fair, if we're being fair in our assessment of Major League Baseball owners, there's probably a handful of them, maybe even more, closer to half, who are like the Pirates owner who just want to make money.
hmm
And they're going to pad that bottom line however they can. But I have a theory about the big market teams versus the small market teams. And it was while you were speaking, I thought, wow, he's onto something here. And is it possible that these small market teams, and I'm talking about the Rays, they know that they're always going to have less to work with.
hmm
So what they end up focusing on is less of the stuff that wows on the stat sheet and when free agency comes by. And they're looking for more of a fit. I mean, you have to have the talent to go with it as well. But then the narrative around these teams becomes, well, nobody thinks we're going to be any good. And then you get guys that end up being, they gel together, they work together. And I would actually
Yeah.
contend that even the baddest teams in the league, like the Marlins being a 100-loss team last year, they may have had better team camaraderie than some of the other teams that were even in the playoffs, and to some extent, because at least they're in it together. They know what their common mission is. Is there something to that as to why some of these small market teams maybe, after years of being told that they're no good, are like, you know what, screw this. We're going to make sure we get the guys that are going to fit in what we're looking to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, you're right that these small market teams are always going to have that problem. They're never going to bring in the big dollar contracts that the Yankees and some of the larger, like the Dodgers, the Phillies, Boston can even command. So what they do is it goes back to like the old Moneyball mindset in the early 2000s. If you haven't read that book, you should read that book, and I'm sure you've seen the movie.
It's on the bookshelf up here.
There you go. So yeah, the idea is that, hey, how do I win with the small market teams? And the information in that book, baseball's gone beyond that. It's evolved past where that was, and that's the interesting thing about the game is you can keep on. How do I get better? The Rays, they were looking at statistics that nobody saw before. Sabermetrics was kind of new about 5 years ago, maybe a little bit earlier. They were all in on sabermetrics. They looked at, wow, we're noticing that the spin rate of the fastball is increasing the probability of having a strikeout.
It's insane.
And they'll record that and measure that on their pitchers. They were doing that way before anybody that I know of. In Moneyball, I think that you'll see there's maybe an argument of what would result in a win, a higher on base percentage or a higher slugging percentage, and that's still open for debate.
Yeah.
But if you can get guys on base and not get out, not a bad thing. So
No.
yeah, I mean, you look at some. Well, let's look at some guys that can pad our power hitters. Like the Yankees are stacked with power hitters, and they can't. They ended up losing in the playoffs, and they made a good run. And this year they all look old and injured, and no one's getting on base. I hope for the best for them, but then you get a team like the Rays, and they're scrappy, and they're getting on base, and they're getting it done with guys that are making like a fifth of the payroll.
Yeah.
So it's you look at, hey, how are we gonna win? How are we gonna solve this puzzle and win? And you gotta love it. I mean, Lucas, it's so funny. My son, 7 years old, he was all in on the Yankees last year. If you remember, this time last year and into the summer, the Yankees were the number had the most wins in the league, killing it. We bought, and Aaron Judge was going in his historical run, which we got to watch, which was great. This year, he's all into the Rays. So yes, he's a bandwagon fan. He's 7 years old, mind you. However, you gotta love what they're doing. We're watching the Rays every day, and they're a fun team. We wish them, I hope to see them in a postseason. I'm sure we will.
Here's a philosophical question for you, and you talked about the small market teams never being able to compete. In the NFL, their ad revenue sharing program is equal across the board. So the worst teams in the league and the smallest market teams in the league get the same cut of games in terms of ad revenue that they're supposed to, or TV revenue. In baseball, it is not the case. From what I have understood is that, as you pointed out very astutely, the Yankees have the S Network is like a $500 million contract, and the Marlins were lucky to get a $50 million contract. Why is it that baseball can never get to the point of an equal share? Because it seems like it would still benefit the owners because there's still a lot of money to be made. Because you could make the argument
Hmm.
that if there's better revenue sharing, I know that there are revenue sharing things in Major League Baseball with the luxury tax and all that kind of thing, but it's to me, I've always felt
Mm.
like it was tricky accounting because there's a lot of ways in which you could make sure that that doesn't. It's like when the casinos open in a state and they're like, oh, the money's going to go toward the general fund, and it's like, well, what
You
is
mean
that?
in the essence of like better
Yeah.
competitiveness
Yes.
and equal
Yes.
play
They say that it's for
uh,
competitive balance, but
balance? Yeah,
it doesn't feel like it to me. It feels like that's the way that they explain it away. But the players would also benefit from it too, wouldn't they? Because if the teams now have more resources, theoretically they could sign them to bigger contracts. And part of what they went on strike about last year was upping the average salary,
yeah,
right? So
yeah,
guys like Max Scherzer are sitting at the table. Well, he just signed a $40 million deal, so he's good.
yeah.
But it's the guy that has been like the Drew Maggies of the world who are trying to just make a living, and they're trying to up those salaries. So would revenue sharing the way the NFL does it actually benefit them? And are they just obtuse in not being able to make it happen?
I've gone back and forth on this issue over the years so many times. For instance, you do have the luxury tax. So if a team decides they want to go spend, they got to pay for it. And I don't know who's over the luxury tax now, but I would suspect it's the Yankees, the Mets, the Dodgers, maybe the Phillies. I think they
Padres.
did Padres. Yeah, the
Yes.
Phillies did last year. So those guys are saying, yeah, we're willing to spend, we're willing to pay for it. I listen, like with what you're seeing on the field right now, I don't think it's necessary to have that competitive balance. It'd be nice to get, like I think I mentioned earlier on the pod, where I don't think we're going to see the Pirates in the postseason. This season's too long, and they did sign Brian Reynolds to a 5-year contract extension, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't. So yeah, you're right. It would be nice if they could get like one or two more guys, a bat, and then an extra arm, and then they'd be able to go. Yeah, probably not going to happen. What they rely on is trading away their talent and getting up rookies and then developing them, and they're not very
Trading them
good at
away.
developing anybody.
I
So,
know, but like that's the cycle that we get into,
hmm
the vicious cycle. And it hurts me as a guy who loves
why can't you be the Rays though? Why can't you just be the Rays?
that feels like an outlier. Like, okay, oh yeah, let's do that. Like, hey man, why don't you just be Tom Brady and just, like win all the time?
hmm
Like, and not all the time, but I feel like that is easier said than done.
So,
And even but
yeah,
even the officials, the guys that leave the front office of the Rays, when they go somewhere else, they don't capture that magic. Look at Bloom in Boston. He's getting so much flack because they didn't sign Bogarts. They didn't sign Mookie Betts, right? And there's something about the way
hmm
that they work as a team that works. Like, and you can't even explain it. I'm not even sure they can explain it. They've got to be sitting there thinking, like, I can't believe this is
Well,
still
you
working.
never know what's going on behind those closed doors. And Bogarts, I mean, he's killing it right now. I think he's one of the Padres that's
Oh yeah,
actually doing well.
yeah, he
And
should.
so that looks like a miss. But if you're a team and you're the front office of the Red Sox, you're like, okay, we think we realistically have a chance to sign a couple guys, and Bogarts is going to be really expensive. We don't think we can afford him. We're not ready. You look at your team, the Red Sox. We're in a rebuilding year, and I think and before the season started, that's what I thought, and that's probably what the front office thought
Oh
too.
yeah.
And they're doing well, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, they're in the mix of it. And if they're in the mix in it in July, you're thinking to yourself, maybe we need to pull somebody in and
Call up the Reds and see
call
who
up.
they got.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
absolutely. So
Overpay for a reliever
I
at the
mean,
trade
no, I
deadline.
think you're gonna get a team like Detroit, like that
Yeah.
classically never makes it. They have a couple guys that could probably get traded. Erod, for
Yep.
one, could
Go
probably
back to the Red
move.
Sox.
We mentioned the Pirates Bednar. I suspect he would move. So yeah, I think I think you'll probably see a couple. Like I think the Red Sox could be one of those teams that do that.
I just wish we weren't in that cycle. I just wish that it was different, that we could
Mm-hmm.
see, because even you mentioned the Tigers. The Tigers to me it's sad because they're like an original six team in hockey. Like they were good. And Tiger Stadium, rest in peace, Tiger Stadium, like
Mm-hmm.
used to be a quirky but yet great venue. And maybe this is just me getting old and I'm aging every second that this podcast goes by because we're talking nostalgia. But I don't know. I guess I wish the business mechanics of baseball would change so that we could see more than just what we see. And maybe that's asking too much.
It's so difficult, though. You saw how difficult it is to negotiate with owners this season, even
Right.
for basic salaries and things that made sense. And you don't know exactly what was going on. We heard like reports of things happening, but it was hard to figure out exactly who to side with. You're like, well, the owners, they need to make money. The players, they want to have fair play and more competitive pay for their younger players that are coming up.
Yeah, it is a tough call. I know that back in the day, you used to hear a lot about these players get paid way too much and they complain way too much when they'd go on strike. And as I've gotten older and understood more of life, you've probably been in the same boat. I look at both the owners and the players and think both of them are doing exactly what they should be doing, right? The
Right.
owners should be trying to make as much money as possible because that's what they do. And the players should be trying to get everything they can out of the owners.
Right.
And every time the CBA comes up, you're going to hit that impasse because both of these sides, I never blame either side because I'm thinking, well, who's supposed to budge? Like, are we really supposed to expect? I know the owners have the runway to be able to hold out because they have like generational wealth, but they're not just going to be like, yeah, you know what? Just go ahead. Just take it.
Well, look at what MLB did in the playoffs. Okay, we're talking about teams we'd like to see in the postseason. They expanded the playoffs. That was huge. It used to be 4 teams from each league. It used to be the division leaders and a 1 wild card, and now
It used to be less than that even back in the day. It used to go right to the championship series.
So you could never see somebody that gets hot in August and September in the final quarter or third of the season. You're like, wow, this is an up and coming team, and they're clicking, and you can never see that happen. Now we're in year 2 of an expanded playoff, and I can't wait to see what happens. I think that you'll see smaller market teams have an opportunity to go for it.
Yeah, you definitely will. I mean, and I like the way that they have adjusted they don't call it a plan anymore, but I didn't have an issue much with the 1-game sample, and I understood why people didn't like it because baseball is one of those weird games where like the Royals can take 2 or 3 from the Yankees and you can't explain it. You just say, baseball, and you kind of move on. So I get why 1 game isn't the best way to do it, but I love that there is suspense in that series.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, the Phillies last year, perfect example. We had a guy on this show, Coach's cousin, Alex, who came on. He's a big Cardinals fan. And this is back during football season, we do what we call crunch time, where we go through like 10 games. And he famously said, I think the Cardinals are going to show the Phillies what's up. And at the Super Bowl this year, I put together a montage of all of our terrible picks. And that was one of them because he was so fervent of they're going to show him what's up. And they got swept. Like the Phillies just said, get out of here.
Yeah, that was
They
so
retired
fun.
Albert Pujols. They retired Yadier Molina. They said, get out of here. They tried to get Adam Wainwright out of there too. He's still holding on, I think. So
in a 3-game series. So
exactly. That's what I mean. And then Phillies went to the World Series. And I know personally, I thought they were going to win it. I was a believer that they were a team of destiny because it seemed that way.
It did.
And it didn't work out. Dusty Baker got his first World Series. So,
happy for him.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, you as a fan, probably not as crushed as you would have been 20 years ago, but still not great.
I still can't look at the Astros the same way. I still get like PTSD when I see that team play. And but they won fair and square. They played win. I think. So you think, yeah? Well, now the spotlight's on him, and and Dusty got his World Series, which
happy for Dusty,
happy for him.
Yes, exactly. So as we get closer to the end of this,
that was painful.
I know, but as we get close to the end of this, the other big story in the news for baseball has been the Oakland A's, and for many reasons, they've managed to. If you had a checklist of how can we have the worst possible season imaginable from every angle, they have managed to do it. And I'm not even dogging them. It's just a fact. With the movement to Las Vegas that seems to be imminent.
Yeah.
Everything that happened with their poor broadcaster over the weekend and being historically bad. Like, historically bad. They're 10-34.
Yeah. And they had good players over the past 10 years that just nothing happened.
Yes.
And they just squandered everything. Matt Olson, Matt Chapman, a handful of pitchers that are still hanging around. It just hasn't have Sean Murphy. I think he's on the Braves as well.
Makes
he was
me
a good
sad.
catcher.
Makes me sad. That is that's a franchise that has a lot more history than I think people today, if you're new to baseball, remember because they haven't been relevant in so long. But they're moving, and I wonder to myself if that's kind of where we're headed in baseball. I have 2 things: either Do you think that baseball is ever going to expand? Because I've heard a lot of that. Salt Lake City, Nashville's on the table, Charlotte's on the
Charlotte.
table for some of these places.
Hmm.
I personally wonder if that is going to further dilute the product and perhaps contraction is a better idea. It's up for debate. I'm not saying I feel a certain way about it, but I want to bring that up to you with this news of the A's because they're going to move to Vegas. I think it's going to be good.
I like it. I like the A's moving to Vegas. I think Vegas is a great sports town. It's going to be a good fit for them. The ownership of the A's really better get their acts together, because
100%.
they better get some money together because they need to make some signings or get some great draft picks or develop. They need to do something. They look terrible.
They need to
right
put their
now.
money where their mouth is. Like if they're going to relocate and talk about how Oakland's not giving us our stadium with public funds and all that stuff, so they're going to
Yeah.
skip town and go to Vegas, which is fine because Vegas right now is like the new epicenter of sports, where they got hockey team. I predicted that they won't have an NBA team because I don't think Adam Silver has the appetite for it. But I feel like as I was saying those words, I knew they were crap because I'm like, they're
Mhm.
going to have one. Like Vegas wants all of the teams.
Yeah,
And they got the Raiders. So they're well on their way, but they have to win.
they do.
They have to go there and at least be competitive.
They
You
do.
can't go there and suck.
You can't go there and be terrible
No.
as a brand new team, as bad as they are, historically bad as they are right now. But as for the other expansion cities, I like it. I think that there's enough talent out there that it would support the competitiveness. Charlotte would be great, another East Coast team, because the only team that's in the Southeast is really Atlanta.
Right. And that's what Coach brought up to me about the fact that Atlanta holds such a geographic dominance
They do.
over the Southeast. And what I've heard is that teams like the Braves won't want a team in Charlotte because they have so much of that landscape now. But I honestly wonder if their fandom is not as heavy as it could be in those like outskirts of the South, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, and I disagree with Atlanta if they believe that. But yeah, I did go to an Atlanta Braves game a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago. Beautiful stadium. There was a couple that I was talking to that traveled about 2.5 hours to go to that game.
I mean,
That shocked me. I was like, wow.
but that's still like, yes, 2.5 hours is a long way to travel
Mhm.
for a singular baseball game.
Yeah.
But 2.5 hours in the South, you'd still theoretically be in the state of Georgia, potentially. I'm not sure,
Right.
right? So like
No, they were.
it's
Yeah.
it's an expansive geographic area that I can tell you from my personal work is expanding like crazy. I mean, the numbers show them people are migrating down there. So I think that there will be an appetite for more.
Yeah.
Nashville, I think, is another city that could have a lot of potential. They seem to have
Oh yeah.
a fun fan base for the teams that they already have. Well, the Titans are boring, but the Predators, on the other hand, if you thought my take on the NL Central was bad, you should hear what I have to say about the AFC South, man,
Oh, wow.
because it's not good. But Nashville, I think, would be a great baseball town because
Mhm.
much like hockey, baseball is much more localized in its fandom. Usually, baseball isn't as much of a national sport the way that it used to be. It's not like it's all
Yeah.
regional,
Yeah.
but I think you have more of a chance for these smaller cities like Nashville who are very passionate and they could come and have a great fan base.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Well, what I'm talking about is when I watched the Super Bowl and I saw the Eagles win in 2019 and I saw the Eagles kick butt this year,
Should have won.
and I went and
Saying it
watched
now.
the Super Bowl, and there was the penalty call. I'm like, I'm losing my mind, and it just reminded me. And that sport's just a different animal. There's gonna be calls that are controversial that end the game. So I just looked at how I'm like, why do I invest myself into a sport that is so controversial that I knew it was gonna happen. And it was just because I'm an Eagles fan and I was watching the game and I was like really into it and I got my heart torn in half. And I think a lot of people felt like that was an unfair situation. But so I'm like, I just can't wait for baseball. There's more games. Yes, there are bad calls. Yes, there's a lot of things that are going on. But the data set is so big that by the end of the season, I think you can generally say you're getting the best teams into the postseason. You're getting a pretty good postseason product now. I think I like it. I personally like it, and it's a faster game with more action.
Yeah.
I mean, what can you hate?
I think that it's working out. I did want to talk about Ohtani and the Angels, but I think we're going to save that for another time because
Fair.
that is a lasting topic that will be there until Ohtani signs a $600 million contract with whoever ponies up the dough. So we will leave that on the table. However, I want to start doing something every month with you and do a play of the month. And a play came across my bow that I want to describe to you because it's wonderful. Do you recall, gosh, this was what, 20 years ago, 23 years ago?
Put me on the spot.
Spring training game where Sir Randy Johnson killed a bird with his fastball.
Yes,
Do you remember
of course. I've seen the video many times.
Oh, yes. Famous video. Well, another Diamondbacks pitcher, hopefully I say his name right, Zach Gallen. Gallen.
Yeah.
Also killed a
Mhm.
bird. This
Yep.
time, I believe, was at the curveball. So 2 Diamondbacks pitchers have done what is almost statistically impossible to do, hit a flying bird with a pitch. And I think that's incredible.
Unbelievable.
So, it is.
Honestly, yeah. And the fact that it was 2 Diamondback pictures just makes it
Exactly.
even more improbable. And that's baseball, baby.
It is. That is a great way to end this, folks. John, I've had a really, really good time with you, but a little housekeeping. Don't forget to tune into Iceman and Coach every single week. Not only will we have some of these sub shows, but we have the main show, which we come out with every single week. Podcast, YouTube, wherever it is that you listen or watch, make sure to like, subscribe, rate, whatever is appropriate for wherever you watch it. As far as Coach is concerned, he is a host on the Pub Time Podcast. Make sure you support them wherever you find your podcast. Visit the Matty Ice Media Network website, mattyicemedia.com, to support the other podcasts that we have, Iceman and Coach, Fire Footwear, plus some others. I hope that this finds you well. I hope this finds you safe, John. It was a great time. I hope you had a good
Genuinely,
time.
thank you for having me on. This has been a really great time.
I agree. We will see you all next time. This is Flashing the Leather.